March 26th is a very special day for sneakerheads around the world, especially for those of us with an affinity for Air Maxes. That day is Air Max Day, where Nike reveals upcoming Air Maxes, but this year felt a little bit different. It felt special. A shoe with a great mystique and great story behind it has returned. Air Max 1 86 Big Bubble. Quick history lesson behind the shoe. Tinker Hatfield, who was the designer behind the Air Max 1, was inspired by Centre Pompidou, which is a building in France that is transparent, so you can kind of see through the building. And I've been lucky enough to see it in person. It is really quite remarkable. So he thought, why not expose the Nike Air unit, at the time a very transcendent technology? Why not expose it to consumers? Why not expose it in the midsole? It seems so obvious now, but back in the day, his bosses and leaders at Nike, they were not behind this idea. They thought it would be destined to fail. They thought it was a horrible idea. But eventually, he fought and he won and he prevailed, so they forged ahead and decided to expose the Nike Air unit. But before the Nike Air Max 1 that we all know and love nowadays came along, there was the original iteration that had the bigger Nike Air unit exposed. They started production in 1986, but quickly found out the Air unit was prone to cracking, especially in colder climates. So they had to go back and redesign it, and in 1987, the Air Max 1 that we know now, with a smaller exposed Nike Air unit, was released, and the rest is history. Back in the early days of the internet, there were rumors of this story on sneakerhead forums, but it was never really confirmed until Nike themselves came out and said this was a true story. And I'm really glad that Nike's taken advantage of that story, capitalizing on it, and bringing it back to life. Here we go. This shoe released on Air Max Day, March 26th of 2023, a very fitting day for $150. And it's actually cheaper than a lot of other Air Max 1s, specifically the Air Max 1 Premiums that go for $160 or $170. So I like that lower price point. And according to Nike, they use CT scans of 1 out of 400,000 original pairs that were produced back in 1986 to try and recreate the shoe as close to the original as possible. So if that's true, I gotta give Nike credit for putting that much thought and detail into the shoe. Now this colorway is the OG of all OGs. It is the color that the original Air Max 1 came with, the university red and the white, as well as that very light tint of gray on the mid panel. Love this colorway, love the color blocking, so iconic, wouldn't change a thing. The upper sole of the shoe features a nylon mesh based layer with suede overlays, and you'll see two different types of mesh on this shoe. Predominantly, you'll see this open cell mesh on the toe box, and then you'll see a more shinier mesh on the ankle collar, as well as some of the tongue. Now this mesh does feel very nice. It's very soft, especially when you put it on feet. Generally, I do prefer leather shoes over any other material, but the one advantage of a mesh-based layer is you don't see the creasing of the shoe as much as you would on a leather pair of shoes. But on the flip side, I've always found mesh holds dust a little bit more than leather shoes, so it really comes down to personal preference. Now the suede overlays on the shoe, it is a synthetic suede. If you compare the suede to genuine suede that you see on this Air Max 1, the crepe soft gray, it is very different. You can tell immediately when you run your hands over it. It's hard to describe how it is different, but the synthetic suede almost feels too smooth and too light compared to genuine suede. However, I will give them a pass for using synthetic suede because I believe in the 1986 version, the same type of suede was used. So I guess if they're trying to make it as close to the original as possible, synthetic suede had to be used. The shoe features a polyurethane midsole, which is lighter than a rubber midsole. And when you squeeze it, it feels so nice. I just love squeezing the polyurethane material. It feels bouncy. And of course, the most distinct feature of this shoe is the large bubble. You see the 4 bags inside the shoe instead of the usual 3. And you can really see the difference when you put them side by side. Now, what's interesting about the midsole is that seam that extends to the outer edges of the Nike Air unit. Again, compare that to a modern day Air Max 1. You don't see the same seam. I don't really like how this looks. I prefer the modern day look. However, I do have to give Nike credit for going into the details to modify this part of the shoe so it can be as close to the original as possible. And my favorite part about every shoe is the booty, everyone's favorite Nike Air branding. And the outsole of the shoe is the very familiar rubber outsole with the waffle pattern. And this looks like any other Air Max 1 outsole. So I'm assuming throughout the years, the outsole of the Air Max 1 hasn't changed. Love that, such an iconic outsole. Moving on to the inside of the shoe, the ankle collar padding on this shoe is slightly thinner than a modern day Air Max 1. And I'll get to that more when I talk about sizing and comfort. When you really look for it, you can notice it. But in my opinion, it's not really that noticeable. The padding still feels very soft, very nice. And what's cool about this shoe is you actually see the size of the shoe on the ankle collar. They do the same thing on the outsole of the Air Jordan 2. However, one thing that they miss is if you buy a women's exclusive Air Jordan 2, the sizing actually still comes in men's. So they did miss that detail. I wonder if you buy a woman's Air Max 1 86 Big Bubble, if they do come in that woman's sizing and the ankle collar, Or do they just go with men's sizing anyway? If you're a female watching this video and you bought this shoe, please let me know in the comments below. And it comes with a red insole with Nike Air branding on top. The tag on the tongue says Nike Air Max, exactly what you would see in a modern day Air Max 1. Now this shoe doesn't come with extra laces. I have no idea if they came with extra laces in 1986. I'm assuming not, so usually I would complain about no extra laces, but since they're trying to go as close to the original 86 version as possible, I'll give them a pass this time. Now the box of this shoe is also very special. It's not a standard Nike Air Max red box. I know the pre-aged aesthetic is kind of getting played out, at least in my opinion, it's getting played out. But this shoe, it totally makes sense to have a pre-aged aesthetic. Theoretically, the shoe takes you back to 1986, so of course the box is old, and you can see a transparent swoosh when you can see right into the box, resembles a Nike Air unit. I love that, so dope. But my favorite thing about this box is the Nike Air unit you see on the side. I think that's so smart, so creative, love that. And now moving on to sizing, I'm a size 9.5 true to size. I usually always go up to size 10 for Air Max 1s because I have wide feet. However, I was starting to see online people were saying because the padding and the ankle collar is thinner than a usual Air Max 1, I can just go true to size even for people that have wide feet. I don't really actually agree. I think the ankle collar padding is thinner in comparison, but not by a significant amount. And maybe it's because I just have unusually wide feet, so I don't feel the difference. But I went with a size 9.5 true to size. I do kind of wish I went with a size 10. It is very snug. It's nothing that hurts, it's not too uncomfortable, and as someone that lives in a colder climate in the northeast of the United States, I do wear thick socks very often, and with thick socks, I think it's just a little too snug for my liking. So if you have very wide feet, and I emphasize very wide feet, you have to be sure that you have wide feet. I still do recommend going up half a size. You can fix a slightly looser shoe, but you can't fix a shoe that's too tight. In terms of comfort, even though the padding is slightly thinner, it's still very comfortable. It's still sufficient padding in my opinion. The cushioning feels nice. And I especially like the polyurethane midsole. It feels bouncy, it's lightweight, lighter than rubber midsoles. I really like how light it feels on my feet. Overall though, the Air Max 1 has never been the most comfortable shoe. It's very solid, but modern day technology and materials and the foam that's used nowadays kind of just surpasses what the Air Max 1 is able to offer. But in general, I can wear an Air Max 1 all day, no problems. The total sole score for the Air Max 1 86 comes to 22 out of 25. One of the highest scores for a shoe that I've given a review on, and that totally makes sense. I think this shoe was very well done. The colorway, of course the OG of all OGs, not a thing I would change about the colorway, it's so nice. The materials, even though the suede is a synthetic suede, I do understand that they're trying to go for an 86 replica, which uses a synthetic suede. Give them a pass on that one. Comfort wise, it's an Air Max 1. It's solid, it's not the greatest, but overall the padding is nice, the cushioning is decent, so the comfort is right around average, right around the middle. Versatility wise, I think this colorway is one of the most versatile colorways. So easy to wear, white and red, one of the most common colorways you can find. And I've always thought the Air Max 1 silhouette is one of the most versatile shoes you can buy. So you put these two together, versatility wise, perfect. And in terms of storytelling, I think Nike did a really good job. From the pre-aged box to the shoe itself, where they really did seem to go out of their way to produce one that's as close to the original as possible. However, what impresses me the most is on Nike.com, the description for this shoe is really detailed. You can see a whole story and history of the shoe. Usually, Nike.com puts zero effort into the description of a shoe. Even when a shoe has a very rich history and background, they don't really tell you much. They kind of describe the colorway, put some words together, and that's it. But for this shoe, they really put in a lot of effort, so credit to Nike. Releases like the 1986 Air Max 1 Big Bubble is why I like the sneaker industry so much. Nike took a very cool story behind a very iconic shoe, a shoe that really changed the sneaker industry, and they really capitalized and executed well on it. I wasn't around back in 1986, so I can't call myself a true OG. So while I wasn't around for the original, I'm really glad that Nike was able to bring the story and the shoe back to life. So that's it. Thanks for watching Sole Inclined. Let me know what you think of the Air Max 1 86 Big Bubble. Like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And remember, tomorrow may never come, so wear your shoes.